So up till 5 years old, I lived on Oakshire in Mount Washington, and so many memories about that there was, like, on Green Spring Avenue, there was an old store where there was still sawdust on the floor that we used to go, and I remember the canned goods on the shelves. I think I called the man Mr. Green Jeans. I don't think that was his name. And then from there we moved to Ranchley, which is not far, in the city. And I grew up on Ivy Mount, and I was born in '58, so that's putting you in the '60s somewhere. And then I went to cross-country elementary school. Which was interesting about that is that when I was in my first grade class was the busing. And my parents never talked to me about this, and so naturally we just had 5 new children, and I can tell you to this day the new children in my class. Abraham Simpson, we went all through college. So when we moved to Ivy Mount Road, we lived in the city, which is important because my father represented the 5th District at that time, and we always lived in the city. I went to cross-country elementary school, and it was the first grade that there were children bussed into my class. I can tell you the names of the students. My parents never said anything to me, and so therefore I never thought anything about it until 4th grade when Wendell Durant and we were boyfriend-girlfriend, and he told me that we could not get married because black people and white people do not get married, and I remember thinking how sad and how stupid. Stayed in Mount Washington, and at that time, many of the children or students went to Pimlico. But Beth DeFilla did a very smart thing. They called many of the students that would have gone into Pimlico to go to Beth DeFilla, which was less money than the private schools, and for some reason, my parents sent me there, and so from never being an observant Jew, all of a sudden I'm having Hebrew and the Bible and this and that, and it was like a very weird time. So that was what we call middle school, and then I went back to the city and I went to Western High School for 1 year, where you caught the number 10 on Cross Country Boulevard. Went to Western. It was when Western was all girls, Poly was all boys, and you were out in the quad, and I hated Western. And I went to then the Baltimore Experimental High School, which closed in 1982. I graduated high school in 1976. It would like the School for the Arts, but not. And now I can tell you more about Mount Washington. I can tell you pretty much every store that was in the Mount Washington Village. We had the Mount Washington Pharmacy. We had the Shapiros, who owned the Mount Washington Market. Upstairs was a place called Furry Fakes, where it happened to have been my aunt's store that everyone got their coats. We had House of Flowers for a little bit. That was a neighbor who did flowers arrangements. Bonnie Rappaport was there. She had a kitchen store, I think one of the first women who came out with cooking. We had a little place that you could go and eat some food, and there were also children's games. We used to have a coffee shop and a French, like a French pastry bistro, and then those two didn't get along, and there were more arguments on who could sit on the front porch. Sparwasser's was there before Mount Washington Tavern. We used to go down there and eat the best French fries, and there were still people that lived in those houses that we now know as shops. I always lived in Baltimore City. However, it was like the outskirts of Baltimore City. Mount Washington used to be country homes for people that lived in the city. So early on, I was at school with children of different color, with children of different religions, and because of the way I was raised by my parents, it was never a thing. My father was in politics, so they would have coffees, and many people of color would be there because my father was like one of those ultra liberal politicians. I never thought so there is one story that I never knew anybody's name, but I would tell my mother, I like so-and-so because of their shoes or whatever, and I told my mom, I really like this boy in my class, and he has the cutest curls, and his name is Abraham. So my mom's thinking, he must be like this Jewish little boy, and she's talking about curls. So one day at the PTA meeting, my mom met Mrs. Simpson and realized that what I was describing were cornrows. My mom never said anything other than I met Abraham's mom and she was lovely. Diversity has always been important to me and my family. When I always hung out with people of different religions, but quite honestly, it wasn't until I became an adult that I had really close friends that were of different color. On Ivy Mount Road in Ranchley, where we lived, my father was probably considered the one that people would go and talk to. Teenagers, people older than me at that time would talk to my dad. We also had a swimming pool, so it was always open to people. And I noticed that my father would have conversations with neighbors that would come to get his advice on things. To this day, my father has died, it's been 20 years from now, but to this day, people will talk about what a wonderful man he was and how important it was to have him as a mentor. So we're dealing a lot with diversity in our country now. I personally I'm the president of Baltimore Clay Works, and it's DEAI, which is what all nonprofits and everybody is trying to bring in the diversity. Black Lives Matter had a strong impact on everyone. It's sad because there are so many people still that don't get it, or there's some that say, oh, I don't see color. Oh, my best friend is black, and probably it's somebody they work with, and they call the best friend, and you do see color because we are of different races, and it should be recognized, and it's important. I think it's something that we have to work on. My grandchildren go to Mount Washington Elementary School, where my children went. Mount Washington Elementary School is diverse in that it's probably 65% black at this point. My grandchildren, they have more friends of color starting at a younger age than I did. So it's going on, but we have a long ways to go, unfortunately. I've always been in the arts in Baltimore. I was with Center Stage Young Workshop when it was on Howard Street, and Wixie the Witch was there too. I truly believe that it's the arts that bring people together. When we first had Artscape, before it became so major, you had people of all colors, of all cultures, come together, and I think we do when it's around art or music or the theater or something, or hopefully it'll be the common cause that we all need to get along, because we just have to. It's frightening to think if we don't.